The world of horror movies takes us from the familiar to the unexpected. And while we're almost used to seeing the unexpected, surprise cast and characters can still send us reeling like nothing else. Indeed, the thrill of spotting an actor not known for horror in a horror film is its own unique delight. So let's check some out. I'm Adam, this is What Culture Horror, and here are some more actors you totally forgot starred in horror movies. Roseanne Barr, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise took the 80s by storm, becoming one of the cornerstone slashers of horror cinema and making icons of creator Wes Craven and star Robert Englund. But by the 90s, things were beginning to sour. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, the sixth film in the franchise, sees Freddy Krueger hitch a ride out of the now childless Springwood and, head right back in again. New Line was scraping the creative barrel by the time this installment arrived, and it was kind of a case of throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. Enter a whole host of famous faces, including a returning Johnny Depp, rock icon Alice Cooper, and yes, Roseanne Barr. Known for her comedy work, especially in sitcom Roseanne, which went for 9 seasons in its original run, Barr is about as far from a horror actor as you can get. And yet, there she is slap bang in the middle of Final Nightmare, with her then husband Tom Arnold as a childless Springwood couple who at first want to take the young main cast home, and then back away, fearful that this will draw Freddy's attention. It's Roseanne Barr's only horror role to date, and one that easily gets lost in our memories of this muddled and messy film. Kristen Wiig, Mother. Mother is the Marmite of modern horror, satisfying those who enjoy the claustrophobia and all-out chaos director Darren Aronofsky brings to the screen, but repelling many who find its religious narrative a little too on the nose. We join Mother in the large, beautiful home she shares with him, an acclaimed poet struggling to create his next masterpiece. As the story unfolds, Him's guests flood into the house, bringing anger, violence, malice, and death, and disrupting the delicate ecosystem the expecting mother has created. Of course, the house is Earth, Him is God, and Mother is Mother Nature, and throughout the film we are introduced to biblical figures in contemporary human form, including versions of Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Jesus, and the Herald, Messenger of God, played by Kristen Wiig. Those familiar with Wiig's work will be used to watching her crack wise and get silly in SNL-adjacent comedies like Date Night, Bridesmaids, and Sausage Party. But alas, as the Herald, she is dark, ruthless, and literally a killer, executing people inside the house. Given the Herald arrives during a break-in, and the cacophony of happenings that occur thereafter, we too easily forget Wiig was ever there. And as this intense experience is her only horror role to date, it seems she might want to as well. Ben Affleck, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. 1992's Buffy the Vampire Slayer was dead on arrival, failing to take what the studio wanted at the box office and receiving tepid to scathing reviews from the few critics who saw it. Directed by future Buffy TV series executive producer Fran Rubel-Kuzui, from a script written by future Buffy TV series showrunner and head honcho Joss Whedon, the film may not have been up to much, but it almost gave one unlikely young star his first major break. Now, Ben Affleck isn't known for horror, having done precious little in that department across his 3.5-decade-long career, but early on, he was willing to try anything, and try he did. Affleck got just one line in Buffy, in which he features as a basketball player who is shocked and disgusted by the sudden appearance of vampires on the court. Although the actor frames the story as him being cut from the film, he does actually appear on camera. It's just Kuzui hated Affleck's performance so much that his line was dubbed over after the fact. For this reason, and the sheer brevity of this role, we can all be forgiven for forgetting that the Good Will Hunting star was almost hunting vampires in the same decade he picked up the first of his 2 Oscars. Octavia Spencer, Drag Me to Hell. Despite being active since the mid-90s, with a strong history of dramatic roles to her name, Octavia Spencer didn't really break through until Tate Taylor's 2011 period drama The Help, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. This means that, along with larger supporting roles, she has a lot of pre-2011 bit parts and background roles to her name, often being cast as a nurse, retail staff, or other anonymous service personnel, and often arriving in the credits with no character name. And this is precisely the case for Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. Drag Me to Hell propelled Raimi's signature horror style out of the 90s, where it was last seen, and into the noughties, feeling nostalgic but fresh at the same time. With a story about loan officer Christine Brown being cursed by an aggrieved Romani elder to be dragged to hell in 3 days' time. And there, looking on in the bank where Christine works, is Spencer, lineless and wholly underutilized. As if that wasn't enough, Octavia Spencer also played a nurse in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 that same year, going equally unnoticed both times. Jason Mewes, Feast. If we're being honest, Jason Mewes is known for one thing and one thing only: Jay and Silent Bob. Kevin Smith's best bud since childhood has been popping up in Smith's films since the beginning, as foul-mouthed, drug-dealing, sexy dancing stoner Jay. He knocks it out of the park every time, and while he is cropped up in numerous non-viewer skew pictures, he usually plays some kind of Jason Mewes type. John Gulager's Feast, about a bar in Nevada that comes under attack from a pack of monsters with claws and teeth and all the usual nightmarish things, is one such film. Mewes is there from the beginning and is one of the first to go down, with his face torn off by a monster before getting accidentally shot by the bartender. Nobody really has a proper character name, and Mewes is credited as Edgy Cat in the credits. Although for all intents and purposes, he seems to be playing himself, complete with him referred to by his real name in some brief on-screen text. And maybe that's it. Perhaps it is the similarity of the character to both Jay and Mewes himself that makes the performance sink out of sight in our collective memories. But whatever it is, you really have to go back and watch it again just to double check you actually saw him in this one. Matt Damon, Unsane. Steven Soderbergh loves two things in his films: subtle experimentation and Matt Damon. And by golly, if he doesn't manage to combine them as often as not. But Damon is not always the lead, and sometimes with good reason, especially when it comes to horror. Psychological horror Unsane follows Sawyer, who is duped into sectioning herself and finds herself trapped in a psychiatric facility with her stalker. The movie is tense, claustrophobic, thanks in no part to Soderbergh filming on iPhones, and features Matt Damon as Detective Ferguson, who advises Sawyer on how to protect herself. For a small role, it features a surprising number of shots of the actor, and while he makes his impact, he's gone almost as soon as he's there. I mean, it makes sense. Matt Damon in horror are not a natural fit. He's a dramatic lead with a strong track record of action and a healthy amount of comedy roles. And it seems Damon knows it, as to date, he has only featured in Unsane and Terry Gilliam's Brothers Grimm, both of which are on the fringes of the genre. But this one's definitely worth another look, if only to jog your memory. Carrie Fisher, Scream 3. Scream 3 brought the original trilogy to a close, picking things up for a post-college out-of-Woodsboro installment and sending the old gang to Hollywood for a massacre that doesn't quite feel as essential as its predecessors, but is a worthy end nonetheless. Along the way, Wes Craven managed to convince a few famous faces to show up, including the aforementioned Jason Mewes, Kevin Smith, Lance Hendrickson, and Carrie Fisher. The likes of Hendrickson may have a pedigree in the horror game, but Fisher, on the other hand, has only really been in a handful of horror films, and none as large as Scream. Carrie shows up in the middle of the film as Bianca Burnett, an actor-activist at Sunrise Studios, when Gale Weathers and Jennifer Jolie are digging into Sidney Prescott's dead mother Maureen's past. The part is played straight, but is written tongue-in-cheek, with Bianca chain-smoking through the scene and lamenting her own acting career. It's a brilliant piece of metafiction which proved both Scream and Craven still had what it took, but while Carrie Fisher was a welcome addition to the cast, the brevity of her screen time means nobody but the most dedicated of fans think of her when they think of Scream 3. Thomas Haden Church, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. A feature-length spin-off of HBO TV show Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight features the Crypt Keeper guiding viewers into and out of a film which focuses on ex-soldier Frank Breaker, the guardian of a key that unlocks primordial evil, as he tries to outwit the Collector, a demon who wants to use the key to kick off the apocalypse. At a boarding house in New Mexico, Breaker encounters a kooky cast of residents and misfits, who both hinder and help him in the fight against evil. Among their number is the spineless and appropriately named cook, Roach, played by none other than Thomas Haden Church. Fans of Church know him primarily from his dramatic roles, in films like Alexander Payne's Sideways or Killer Joe, or even from his turn in more popular flair like Spider-Man 3 or the George of the Jungle films, but they sure don't know him from horror. Church has seemingly made a conscious effort to steer clear of the genre ever since Demon Knight, wanting something bigger for his career. And Demon Knight's lack of staying power has everything to do with the fact that everyone forgets Church was in a horror flick at all. Betty White, Lake Placid. Thanks to her exceptionally long life, living to 99 years old, and staying power, we all know who Betty White is, even if we've never watched her shows. Famed for her game shows and comedy work, White's career spanned 75 years and saw her take on just about every role in genre imaginable. But until 1999, horror wasn't on her resume. Steve Miner's comedy horror Lake Placid is, well, it's not exactly Shakespeare, but it is a lot of fun and good, easy popcorn viewing, and so it kind of makes sense that this is where White would show up. The plot centers on a gigantic crocodile, built in the image of Jaws, who terrorizes the fictional Black Lake in Maine, while police and scientists attempt to thwart it for good. White turns up mid-film as kooky local resident Dolores Bickerman, who has quietly been feeding the crocs for years. The part fits her comic sensibilities and personality down to a T, and rather than just popping up as a cameo for its own sake, she has an important role to play. At the end of Lake Placid, in a last-minute stinger, we discover Mrs. Bickerman feeding bread to a float of baby crocodiles, helping the next generation of terrors grow big and strong. Nonetheless, the part is comparatively small given the size of the film and other characters, and White's only real dalliance with horror often gets overlooked. Jack Black, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. For fans of all ages, Jack Black has lit up the screen across a 4-decade-long career, bringing his bombastic presence to everything from children's animations to political thrillers, to stoner comedies, and to weightier dramas. But during all this time, Black has only starred in one proper horror film, / a sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. The film picks up a year after the first film, following Julie James on vacation to the Bahamas with her friends, where they run into a killer who, you guessed it, still knows what Julie did at the beginning of the previous film. The cat-and-mouse game of murder begins again, and Julie has to fess up about almost killing someone and covering it up, if they have any hope of getting out alive. Perplexingly, Black pops up in the middle of all of this as Titus, the dread-headed, pot-smoking pool boy at the resort. It's a classic Jack Black role, allowing him to go full loosey-goosey before he sees his end on a pair of shears. But it's also undeniably an odd one, feeling like something of a relic pulled from the archives that, had the franchise not returned this summer, we may never have remembered was there.